Welcome to Transform You. I'm Dean Sinceri. It's my wife, Holly Kim Sinceri. We're professional coaches. And what we do on our podcast is we actually have our guests talk about a specific issue and we coach them through that. And hopefully they'll benefit and also you if you're dealing with something that's similar to that. And so today we're very happy to have Josh Tomiano. And it's good to have you, Josh. We'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell us about some of the things that you're doing, and then jump right on in and tell us about what you'd like to work on today.
Sure. How do I explain everything about myself? I'll try to be brief. So, I'm a middle-aged man. I have three beautiful, amazing kids that are 7, almost 8, 10, and 12. So middle school is new for me this year, and middle school attitude is new for me this year. I know we're not talking about this, but we could.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could.
I've been married. I've been divorced. I've owned several companies. I've had plenty of failure in my life. I've had plenty of success in my life. As is true with most people's life, my life has definitely done this a lot more than this. And pretty much any vision or plan or goal for my life has not occurred the way that I thought it was going to occur. And that's what makes life interesting, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
as far as, what I do, I've owned a financial planning company for, God, it's been 18 years now, I guess. I also own a media company, which is related to a podcast that I have. And that entire company is based on men. It's based on helping men deal with struggles and failures in their life, kind of real time. I've seen that there's a big gap, it seems like, in society as far as men getting help, which
Yeah.
I'm doing with you right now. But for whatever reason, it seems like a lot of guys aren't willing to, it's like if a woman's going to therapy, you say, good for you. That's great. I'm glad that you're working on you. If a guy does, it's like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
So my goal is to help men be a little bit more open about that, deal with our stuff real time. I coach them through that as well. And we have a podcast where we talk about that also. So yeah, love people to check it out. And I'm really, really
What's the
grateful
name of
and
that
gracious to
podcast?
be on your podcast today. What was that, dude?
What's the name of your podcast?
Oh, the Derelict
The Derelict.
podcast.
Derelict.
Okay, got it.
Good.
Yeah, so you can check it out on all the channels. I can give you information if you want to add it to the
Sure.
show notes
Yeah,
later,
Yes.
but it's the Derelict podcast.
gotcha.
Yes. We want
So
to add
tell
it.
us about what you would like to work on
Mhm.
today.
Sure. Um, we were chatting a little bit about this before the recording,
Mhm.
and I am probably still more cynical about relationships than I wish that I was. So just a little bit of my backstory. I was married for a very long time. I met my ex-wife now at the time when I was really young, right when I went into college. We met actually the first day I went into college.
Wow.
And we were friends for a year and then started dating. We dated all the way through college, and I got married 2 months after my college graduation. We were married for a very long time, and then got divorced several years ago. And then I found myself in my mid 30s as a single man, not really even knowing how to date because I
Yeah.
really hadn't dated since I was in like high school.
Yeah.
So it's a different world dating at 35 than it is at 18.
Yeah.
So I've gone through some ups and downs with that. That's been about the last almost 7 years now. And then during that process, I had a couple long-term relationships, one that was kind of off and on for a couple years, and then the other one was just right before we were celebrating 2 years together, broke up. And that one ended by just a little over 5 months ago now.
Wow.
Um, and I will tell you that I think that's where a lot of the cynicism comes from. That relationship, I would say, in a lot of ways, is the best relationship I've ever had.
Wow.
Wow.
We're the most connected. There was a lot of really healthy aspects about it.
Yeah.
And then there was also a lot of aspects that were unhealthy that I didn't really realize were unhealthy until after we broke up.
Yeah.
Um, but we connected on such a deep level,
Mm.
more so than anyone I've ever been with, including my wife. unfortunately. But we connected on such a deep level that, especially for the first several months after that, I really was cynical of like, I'm never going to find somebody that I connect with as well as her. And I'm only 5 months out. I still have not found that person. So I'm less cynical about it now because I've had time to learn and heal and grow. But to be honest with you, yeah, I'm still kind of in this state of, well, I wonder what this is for me. I wonder what God or my higher power has for me. Maybe I just need to be single for the rest of my life. Maybe
Mm.
there's just not a place for me to really find that, that one person that really, can be my partner and that sort of thing. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. So I'd love to chat with you about that.
Yes, I love it.
Go ahead.
Well, I love that because I just think that it's such a place that, you have a lot of different aspects to it that's so important is that, being in a relationship for a very long time and then figuring out how to date, right? In the world of the internet and all of that. And then from there, having someone that you connect so deeply to
Yeah.
and having that true spiritual connection and then it not working, and the loss of not that you're comparing to the marriage, but in the sense of just analyzing, more analyzing than comparing, but analyzing that, wow, there was a deepness that I didn't have in my marriage that maybe I didn't even realize, but since I touched it, felt it, and experienced it, I can see that that's something that I want. Like, I don't want to lose that part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and just real quick,
Yeah.
just to make a quick comment on this. So I went through a program after I went through my divorce called Divorce Care, and it's run through like a lot of churches, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one similar thing that everybody in the class that I spoke to said, and they said that their long-term deep relationship after their marriage, when that broke up, was actually harder than when their marriage broke up.
Wow.
And I thought at the time, I said, there's absolutely no way that's possible.
Right.
My divorce was very contentious. Unfortunately, we still have a contentious relationship and that sort of thing. I was like, there's absolutely no way it could be harder than that. And in some elements, it was.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why, at least from what I've experienced, is because I more knew what I wanted, right? I was older, I had time, I healed, I went through therapy, I did all these things so that I actually knew what I wanted. So that when I found what I wanted and then I lost what I wanted, it was a bigger loss than not knowing what I wanted and losing what I maybe didn't really want in the first place. Does that make
And
sense?
it's very natural in a sense that if you love deeply, you're going to hurt deeply.
Yeah.
Right. And so certainly commend you on opening up your heart to the place where you just love deeply, which to you may, because of the hurt, turn into cynicism. But from my perspective, it actually is a place of great hope because you have learned to go at a greater depth with another person and you've had a deeper connection. And it was sounds very, very significant. So, first of all, I'm sorry that it didn't work out. And yet at the same time, I commend you for taking the risk of opening your heart to that level. And I think that the cynicism, right, would come from the place of I've just been hurt this deeply, and I burned myself in the stove, and I'm not sure I want to go back into the kitchen, right?
Yeah.
I would
Yeah,
guess, right?
that's part of it. And I really appreciate you saying that, Dean. The other part of it that I've realized, and again, it's taken me, just about 5 months to realize this, is that when I started realizing that the relationship wasn't as healthy as I thought that it was, right? It's hindsight's 2020 sort of thing.
Yeah.
But once I started realizing that also could produce another level of cynicism of, well, I wasn't even right that it was as healthy as I thought it was. So even if it was the healthiest relationship, but it wasn't as healthy as I thought it was, is there even anything out there that's healthier? Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It can
definitely.
almost, if I focus on that aspect of it, it could almost seem even more cynical. We were talking about this before the show, and I'll mention this. Maybe this is a good time for it. I help a lot of men that are going through the divorce process.
Right.
because I've been through it myself, and it's a really,
Painful.
man, it is a gut-wrenching, terrible process, even if you have a good relationship with your ex-spouse. And because of that, I end up coaching a lot of men going through that process.
Yeah.
I wrote an ebook. I told you before the show that I wanted to offer it to all your guests. So if anybody listening or watching is going through that process, thinking about going through that process, here's what I'd ask you to do. If you want to write it in the show notes later, you can, Dean.
Yeah.
Find me on Instagram. It's the same as my podcast name. Just go to The Derelict Podcast on Instagram. And if you send me the word transform, I'm happy to send you a free ebook that I wrote. It's on Amazon right now. And it's the 5 biggest traps that men face going through divorce and how to triumph over them. And what I did is I interviewed several different people and said, hey, what are the things you wish you knew going through divorce to save money, get more time with your kids, deal with your emotional, mental, a lot of this stuff we're talking about.
Yeah.
So even though I haven't figured out the whole relationship not being cynical thing, I do know how to save you a lot of time and energy and effort. And I just wanted to offer that to your audience.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, no, anything that can help anybody we want.
I appreciate that. So, but that being said, yeah, it's as you know, it's all about mindset and focus, right? If I can have my mindset and focus on the fact of what a beautiful thing that I had this better relationship than all the ones I've had in the past. And if it just keeps getting better, then the next one will be better. That's great. Or I can focus on, well, that seemed like that was the one and it didn't work. So maybe it's never going to work.
Yeah. Well, I can say for myself, I was divorced, and then there was a relationship after that was, I thought it was going to be the end all, right? This was going to do it. I was going to actually, everything that I had learned in therapy and counseling and working on myself, that I have arrived, and when it ended, I was exactly where you were. Like, I'm not doing this again. I wasn't really interested in getting married after the first marriage. And I definitely wasn't interested in getting married after that relationship, for sure, as Dean would know. And
that's when we met.
Yes, that's when we met. You're right. And in that, him being my friend was just perfect. Just stay friends. We meet for coffee, we hang out, we can become best friends, but everything, I had given up, and I was okay with giving up. However, by continuing, as you said, the way I look at things is like how to dissect myself, that there is my true self and all the desires and hopes and intentions of what I want, right? And all and all the destiny that I believe God has for me, right? And then the wounded part of me, which I call the wounded self, we call the wounded self, is the part of me that holds all the pain from all the experiences in my life. So if we just take relationships and my experiences of loss, and then the part of me that is cynical and like, I'm not doing this again. I already did it. Holly Kim, you tried, you failed. Yeah, that was good, but I'm not doing this again. I don't want any more pain in the bucket, okay? So we're going to push those people far and away, right? And they can only
I don't relate to that at all. I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's why when you said, I'm like, we know this one. I definitely know this one. Yeah. And that, there's a part of me that, is still cynical about a lot of things in life. And where I have learned and what we teach is that I allow each part of me to have their view and have a voice about the way they see the world and the way they've experienced the world. And by allowing that, then I truly get to have quietness to where, what is it that Holly Kim really wants? What is it that I am truly desiring? Because there was a time when I thought that I had to have all parts of me believe the same. And where I learned was that I just don't know how to do that. Okay. I'll be sober 42 years on January 10th. And so, I've worked on myself since I'm 22 years old, coming from completely dysfunctional human being to hopefully becoming a functional human being. But there is still parts of me that have experienced great loss. And there is still part of me that has a view of, I would say, kind of like Beth on Yellowstone. She's like, I'm coming after you, that you hurt me, stay away, So through that, allowing those parts just to have a voice and being loving towards it has allowed me to be married for 33 years and be in love with my husband. Like, I'm more in love with Dean today than I was all of those years. And it's allowed me to continuously open my heart, even when I may not be at my highest, healthiest, but because I understand my intention and I understand what it is that I desire, that I'm willing to open that heart, knowing that there's two parts, one that's very afraid and one that would rather never be hurt again. But if I'm going to receive what I want and receive and become who it is I believe I can be, not that I've arrived, but who I can be, and I still get to practice in that of being the most loving human being I can in this relationship, that I allow these two parts to have a voice. So it's like the cynic gets his voice, the wound gets his voice, and then what about Josh?
Yeah.
What about him? And all the things, like you said, that you take from your marriage that is so beautiful. You take from your business that's so beautiful. You take from this last relationship that was so deep, and that is what we build on. We don't deny the other parts because we learn from them, but we also don't throw this away either, which that's what I was willing to do at some point in my, growth.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I through my therapeutic journey, especially right after my divorce, I learned about internal family systems, IFS, which is very much what this sounds like.
Yeah.
There's different parts of you, and you have to accept each part and kind of educate each part. And that was really helpful for me, given what you're saying. What I'm curious about, Holly Kim, how do you manage all that? So if there's let's say there's the authentic, true Josh.
Yeah.
Yes.
My actual nature, which I firmly believe that like the authentic, true version of everybody's self is the most beautiful version of their self because they're being authentic.
Sure.
And then we have these other parts that are mismanaged or confused or upset or trying to protect us or, those other things. So I guess my question is with all that is, how do you accept all of those different parts and be open to kind of how they feel about things, but then have your authentic true self win at the end of the day? I don't know what other word to use.
No, it's perfect. It's the best question. You want to go?
I'll answer that.
Are you ready for a journey of self-discovery and healing? Introducing a roadmap to the soul, a practical guide to love, compassion, and inner peace. This book offers practical tools and insights to navigate your inner landscape, release emotional blockages, and embrace your authentic self. Start your transformational journey today by getting your copy now. See the link in the description. And now, back to the lesson.
What I think most people misconstrue is that basically we want to empower the authentic self, right? That's what we're saying. I want to empower that one and not let the other voices have the power to make decisions. So part of our human condition is we always have our authentic self. We have our wounded self, and we have our reactions to the wound.
Right.
And when our reactions have power over us, then we end up suffering.
Right.
Like for example, I remember early on in our relationship, Holly Kim was working a lot. She had 2 jobs, and I wasn't seeing her too much.
Right.
Now,
my protective self was a workaholic. Let's just go.
I was like, listen, you're going to need to cut back on work, spend more time with me, or, this is not working well for me, kind of thing. And so I'm asking her to take time off. So she comes home one Friday. She says, I took off the rest of the day. I took off all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And we get to spend the entire weekend together. Now, when she told me that, a part of me was like terrified. I'm going to be smothered all weekend. She's going to control everything that we do. And then my reaction said, lie to her and tell her we got a golf game. We got a golf game already set up on Saturday. And true self, who I really am, was like, I get to spend time with my wife. Now, all that's going on at the same time. And I'm the one that asked her to take time off. And so that needed, like you said, okay, how do I manage that?
Right.
Because part of me scared to be smothered. A part of me wants to lie to her to create space. And a part of me is desiring to spend more time with her. And if I don't understand and distinguish it, then what part takes over? I'm going to get three drastically different results, right?
Right.
And
then I get a triple message, right?
but I need to understand, we put them in three categories.
Right.
We call the wounded child, the protector, the true self. And so I need to give them a voice.
Right.
To me first. And when I give voice to it, it actually begins to take the power away from it.
Yes.
And if I'm able to communicate to her, say, hey, Holly Kim, a part of me, when you said we're spending the entire weekend, a part of me felt scared and smothered and like I wouldn't have no power. And a part of me wanted to lie and say I had a golf game. But I'm really excited we get to spend the weekend together. And if I need some space, I'll let you know. And all of a sudden it becomes a moment of connectedness and intimacy. The issue is not that I have an issue. The issue is that I don't know how to manage the issue.
Right.
That's when it becomes a problem, because sometimes there's sort of a misunderstanding when we get it, especially in a healing process. Like we're not supposed to have issues. I'm supposed to just, I'm not supposed to have all the chatter. So part of what we say is that, no, it's okay that you have the chatter.
Yes.
But you need to know what the chatter is.
Yes.
You need to externalize it in a safe context. And then through that, it'll become easier to manage it once you have awareness and you give it externalization. So, we do all kinds of exercises. We have those parts: write, draw, talk,
right.
process in group, share with another person kind of thing. And then it becomes a transition. So in some level, in your case, it's like the part of you that carries the pain about the loss of the whole. I don't think it was just the loss of this last relationship. No. It sounds like, but it was the loss of the dream of what you believed it was going to be, which was really sounds painful. And then of course
there was a transition, right? Like when the relationship, I mean, first of all, I was the one that ended the relationship, so I can't even like blame it on her per se, but it was very mutual. But at the beginning, it was the loss of her specifically.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then that transformed into the loss of what I thought that relationship represented.
Yeah.
And then it became the loss of the fact that the relationship didn't even represent what I thought it represented.
Yeah. Which is a whole nother loss.
Which is a whole different,
Sure.
It's just like every other loss. It's an onion. There's multiple layers, right?
Yes.
And those are the layers that I went through. It was first, oh no, me and her are not together. Then it was, oh, I don't have this type of relationship anymore. And then it was, I never had this type of relationship that I thought I had, which could be the deepest level of cynicism of like, well, if I never even had it when I thought it was the best relationship I ever had, then is it even ever possible? And I very much related to what you were saying earlier about the parts. And this is just really timely for me. So I just, again, divorced, share time of my kids with their mom. And I just had them for 8 days straight, dropped them off last night.
No.
And during long periods of time, and basically, I mean, I run multiple businesses, so I'm working, but I didn't have anything on the books. I just was trying to work as much as I could, but basically take as much time off as possible.
Right.
And during that long stretch of time, I'm not a single parent, but I am during that stretch of time, right? It's me and the children. And there's a part of me that is overwhelmingly joyful, excited, like my true self is stoked to have that much time with my kids.
Yeah, of course.
And then there's another part of me that's overwhelmed,
exactly,
feels smothered, feels like I can't handle this. This is insane. There's so much going on. So I definitely relate to that for sure.
Yes. And, one of the things that when you talked about, how do you manage that? When I first started working on myself and seeing that the goal I thought was that all of me had to agree, right? Mm. All of me had to agree about whatever it was that my true self wanted. And as I've continued to work on myself and work with people, I'm like, well, I'm not saying that could never happen. However, that would take a lot of money and a lot of time, and I may never receive what it is that I want, right? So through that process, and then, we always say, well, you give me double messages. The truth is we give triple messages. So when I see that, I allowed this, like learning how to categorize everything that I have lost, and that is an experience of pain, I put in one category. So it's like folding clothes. So I know you fold clothes now because you're alone with 3 children sometimes. So it's like folding clothes. If I have my underwear, my blue jeans, and my overcoat in the same drawer, it's going to be very difficult to get ready in the morning. Well, it's the same with emotions. So my emotional life and my experience and my protection. So if I see that there's, what happened to me goes in one drawer, right? All of that's in one. And then, which is the overwhelming, feeling little, feeling hurt, not loved, not good enough, all of that from childhood to today. And then the part of me that has decided on how do I handle all of that stuff. And, maybe one day it was be a good girl for me, then it was smoke dope, then it was get the right man, then it was, be skinny, then it was be a workaholic, all of those things. And it's like through those reactions on how to keep the pain from, getting any more in there. And once I allowed each part of me have a voice to myself, right? I'm the first person, that they're my privates. We don't show privates unless, you've earned them. You don't go to the dentist and take your clothes off. You leave the room if he says to do that, right? So it's like in that, it's like learning these parts and how they see the world and how they believe. When I allow that to happen, things get very quiet internally. And when that gets quiet, I can hear what my true self really is about. And instead of my true self beating me up because, God, it would be nice if the kids wasn't here today, it's like, it's okay that a part of me didn't want the kids to be here because it's a lot of work. And that allows me on my true self to have compassion for my ex-wife, even though we're not getting along. That the days she has him for 5 days, or 8 days or whatever, it's a rough deal. So it's like I start to have compassion for myself, and then I have compassion for other single fathers, other people. So it's like in that, I can embrace that I love having my children, and I can also embrace that it's overwhelming, and that God, if I had an extra day, somebody to come help me would be really nice. But I don't have to be ugly to myself. So what we do is we help you really categorize those and allow it to be, and then I can really hear myself and empower that and move on, even though these parts of me may be doubting the way I see the world.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a lot of sense to me as well, because the word that kept going through my mind when you were talking about this was shame.
Yes.
Because what happens when, or what can happen, is that when I feel overwhelmed, or I feel like smothered, or I feel like it's too much to have my kids for that long of a stretch of time, what can happen is that triggers shame with me.
Yes.
Because then I'm like, why am I not grateful? You love your kids. You love being with your kids. Like, how dare you feel like this is overwhelming or too much or anything else? And I love what you said, because if I can treat that part with respect and with honor and with compassion, then there's no shame there. Because if I can say, hey, no, it's okay, because it is difficult and there are overwhelming moments and you are by yourself, and like, their mom, as an example, is remarried. So there's another person there, and you have less people, and it's harder, and that's okay. Versus shaming myself. Because then when I shame myself, obviously, as you know, then it just makes it even worse.
Right.
Exactly.
And then I just feel even worse about not having gratitude that I get to spend so much time with my kids.
Yeah.
And then I go down this rabbit hole, speaking of like divorce guys, like we were talking about earlier, then I go down this rabbit hole of, there's a lot of divorce guys that don't get that much time with their kids. So how dare you feel bad? Right. Exactly. And then it becomes about me punishing that part of me versus just accepting them and realizing, no, it's okay. It is overwhelming. It can be difficult. That's awesome. Love that.
Yeah.
Yes. And, one of the things that, for us as a lifestyle, I mean, this is how we live a lifestyle, right? This is our lifestyle of really embracing all of those things. And what that does is, instead of it lingering, getting the shame attack, shame attack, shame attack. And then, God, I want to sedate this. I check out, I zone out because it's overwhelming. It's like, instead of that happening, to embrace those parts in the way they see the world due to the experience that they've had and due to what's happening. It's like, in the way I want to react, when I embrace it, all of a sudden that gets lower and I become bigger. And it's like, I get to make another decision of how do I want to spend this? Okay, well, you know what? Maybe I'm going to hire somebody to come help me next time, twice while they're here, if it's a long period, whatever. And I make a different decision. So when the overwhelming comes, I have a solution from my true self instead of just being like, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. Yes, I am overwhelmed. And this is how I'm going to handle it. But instead of my protector shaming me because I'm overwhelmed, and it's like through that, even with like a relationship, it's like, that part of you being cynical about, oh my God, and then allowing it just to be cynical, it's like, okay, it has reasons,
Yeah.
and then there's me, and then there's me. And what is it? My intentions of my heart is that I'm going to learn and actually, being in a relationship for many, many years and then ending a relationship after 2 years, I thought it was 2, you said, this last relationship, 2 years, that look how much growth you've had because you didn't let it go 27 years. You didn't let it go 20 years or 10 years. That unfortunately it was so good, but there were things that needed to die.
Whenever something comes up to the surface and we're conflicted about it, like in this case, your relationship, and I would say conflicted because obviously there's a part of you that's fighting to want to have a great, long-lasting relationship, and a part of you is like, never again, kind of thing. So, I mean, that's what I could call conflicted, right?
Yeah.
When that comes to the surface, I always say that one of the recommendations I give is I say, okay, in that particular arena, you need to do list work. And perhaps you've done this, but list work is doing somewhat of a history of my relationships that, and I say you just make a list. Right. The first is what happened. So you just allow yourself to think about different experiences that were difficult in any relationship. And then in the middle list, I put how I felt. And then the third list, I put how I reacted. Mm-hmm. So what happened, I'm just using an example for myself. My girlfriend betrayed me and started dating one of my friends. How I felt, betrayed, upset, hurt, ashamed. How I reacted. I acted like it wasn't a big deal. Mm-hmm. Number 2, and I'm just doing a history of, and when things are floating up, it might be from teenage, it might be the last relationship, it might be the marriage, it might be this. But when I do the list work, it gives me the things that on some level I still may be carrying. So this is the event, but the painful emotion is what we call the wounded child. And the reaction is usually what the characteristics of my coping behaviors. Oh, I'm consistently becoming quiet and withdrawing. I'm consistently coming quiet and withdrawing. And so in order to be restored in that particular area, I say we need to practice 2 principles, and they're actually theological principles. One of them is repentance. And repentance is to have a heartfelt sorrow for the things that I have done to hurt you, hurt another, to take full responsibility for that, and to learn to do it differently. So that third list is my reactions will start giving me insight in terms of these are some of the things that I need to really fully take responsibility for and own, and to work on doing it differently. So I need to learn to start having a voice and not isolating when I'm upset. The middle list is I need to practice the principle of forgiveness. And that's not to say that what was done was okay. It's just to say that I'm recognizing that I have hurt in my heart and that I'm willing to lay this hurt down on the altar and ask it to be removed. What's interesting is that the 2 things that create a hardened heart in any area of our lives is unrepentance and unforgiveness, right? When I am holding on to hurt, it's not because I want to, but it's just holding on to hurt. So I'm not taking responsibility for my part. That creates a hardened heart. And then I start getting cut off from those next to me, and I start getting cut off from God. the opposite is true too. When I practice these two simple principles, it actually begins to soften my heart. And so, Jesus said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." But the opposite is true too. He said, "Unblessed is the harden of heart, because they'll be cut off from God and other people." Now, I'm not saying that that's your case. I'm just saying that that's the exercise that we go through in order to soften our heart. Because when you're connected vertically and horizontally, that's when you'll be able to see things clearly. That's when you'll be in touch with that authentic self that you were talking about, and you won't be blinded by the other two. When these other two are very active, that's when we miss some of the red flags. We miss some of the things that, I didn't feel quite right about that. We went out and had a drink, and she had 12 drinks, and it was kind of a red flag. But no, I'm just kidding. I miss it, but whatever. But we all have our own blinders, is my point. But how do we start working on clearing those blinders? Is through that process of doing some of the list work. And as I do that, I start getting insight about the things that I need to take responsibility for. I get insight on things I need to actually let go, which I am by externalizing it. Then it starts clearing my heart. And then the third part of it is this, is to say, okay, Josh, if you were to paint the picture of the ideal mate, woman, for you, what would be those characteristics, as specific and as possible?
I do the 20.
You do the 20.
Yeah, I do 5. The first 5 are non-negotiable. Have to love children.
Right.
Because you got 3, whatever. And then the next 10 are negotiable. The next 5 are just lanyard. Makes her perfect for me. So, so the first 5 are non-negotiable. Now, you can always erase and change, as you may open your eyes to something else. But the first 5 are non-negotiable. The next 10 are negotiable. Like, maybe I would want somebody that didn't have children, but they're negotiable. Maybe I find somebody that has a child, and that's okay. And then the last 5, if she is 5'7", and, she has the blue eyes or whatever it is, then that becomes the list of the sense that the characters, the internal stuff that really connects. So that way, when my true self is out there and I allow myself to be open again to my, my heart, then when that thing is there, I see it and it sees me.
Yeah. That's so good.
I love that. And there's several things about what you said that I think are really, really good. You mentioned quite a while ago, Holly Kim, that you are celebrating a sobriety anniversary coming up. And it made me think about that with what I've learned through 12-step and other various recovery programs is very in line, Dean, with what you were saying about repentance. The way you defined repentance is the same way a 12-step program would define amends.
Yes.
It was the exact same.
Yeah.
It was own your stuff, realize how it affected somebody else, live differently.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I love that because that has been really, really instrumental in my life to be able to not be too cynical. So I appreciate that reminder as well. Because you can't move forward without that. And then you're also mentioning coping behaviors. And again, going back to sobriety, right? Like that's a coping behavior. That's something to medicate with. It doesn't necessarily have to be alcohol and drugs, which most people think of, but it could be anything. It could be, the next relationship even, right?
Exactly.
Like I get out of this relationship and instead of dealing with any of the stuff from this relationship, the next day I get into another relationship because why not? Because I don't want to actually deal with my stuff.
Yes.
And I found myself, as of the time of this recording, those coping behaviors, those medications were trying to hit me hard yesterday.
Yeah.
Because the moment that my kids got picked up, I actually went out with a friend because I knew that I needed to be around some love after that happened. Because I just knew that I just instantly, like I get so sad after I've had my kids for that long.
Sure.
And I just needed to be around some good energy. So my friend and I went out and it was great. But then even as I'm coming home, walking into my empty house.
Yes. Silent house.
There's parts of me that are like, you need to cope, figure it out. Do you want to invite a woman over?
Right.
have some sex or intimacy or
Right.
something else? Do you want to have some alcohol, some
Yes.
drugs? Do you
Right,
want to
right.
shop? Like, do you want
Yes.
to be a workaholic? Like, whatever it is to
Yes.
medicate, to not actually deal with me being myself.
Right.
I
Yeah,
very
Yeah.
much relate to that. And I
that's so
have
good.
to remind myself of
Yes.
the fact that that's not me. It's okay that that part of me
Right.
wants to act out,
Right.
but that's not who I am.
Right.
Yeah, well, let's do this because we're going to have to land a plane that's at high altitude
It's an
real
awesome
quickly.
attitude.
So
I love this.
let's end with this. What's one takeaway? We're each going to say what is the
Okay.
takeaway from today, and then we'll close it down. What's one takeaway for you, Joshua?
I really liked the way you described, Dean, those three columns of over here, what happened, what was difficult, here, how I felt about it, and then here, how I reacted to
Mm,
that. That was really helpful for me. I'm actually I wrote it down as you just heard, and I'm actually going to go do that with my own personal history. I've done things similar to that, but I really like the way you laid that out. So
yeah,
I'm going to actually go do that with specifically my, romantic relationships, my
yeah,
partnerships.
yeah. That's
Yes.
awesome. That's awesome.
So
What
good.
about you, Halcyon?
I'm going to take away understanding that just because something is painful, that I don't have to go into these coping mechanisms and I don't have to be mean to myself because these coping mechanisms want to sedate. And that, I love the way from all this being able to say that because so many people, think that because either I have to do that because I hear it so loudly, or I have to beat myself up because I hear it so loudly, versus that it is what happens to us as a human being, and that it's just a sign that I deserve to love myself a little bit deeper and
Right.
be nice to the part that wants to sedate me that's a red flag to say the part of me that is very in pain about the situation and how to love that. So, just connecting all the dots as a human being and being very human and kind to
Yeah,
ourselves.
that's good.
Yeah.
Love that.
I would say, Josh, that what strikes me is it's real obvious that you've done a lot of work
Yes.
and you've really worked hard on yourself. And I was in listening to you just filled with hope, knowing that you're going to have the relationship that you're looking
Yes.
for.
Oh, thank you.
Just gonna
That
be lucky.
you'll work through this, and when it's time, God's going to send you the right partner, and it's going to be a very long lasting, flourishing, and mutually fulfilling relationship. And I know that because of the clarity of your spirit and also your hunger and willingness to grow, that's just going to happen. So I'm taking away that as a given. And so I sure appreciate you coming on and adding to our conversation and our coaching, because I felt like this was a collaboration. But, those that are out there and listening, you're welcome to visit ihaveavoice.com. We have lots of free videos from our YouTube channel. We have our book. We also have our Transform You program that we would love for you to explore. And also, Josh, tell us about the book again,
Yeah.
and the ebook and the name of it,
And your podcast.
and your podcast.
Yeah, really quick before I do that though, I just want to say thank you, brother, for that comment. That meant a lot to me. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I really appreciate both of you allowing me to be on your podcast and share a little bit of my story and just coach me through that. You have a lot of wisdom, and your listeners and your viewers are very blessed to have you. So thank you.
Thank you, John.
Find me on Instagram, The Derelict Podcast. And if you want, again, if you are a man going through divorce, considering going through divorce, or frankly, just went through a divorce within the last couple of years, send me the message transform, and I will send you that free ebook. It will save you a bunch of money. It'll save you time with your kids. It will give you just a better mental clarity about how to go through it. Honestly, the way that I wrote that book, Dean, is I wrote that book as what I wish somebody told me when I was going through the divorce process that I didn't know, because I didn't have a coach.
Yeah.
If I could go back, I wish that I did, because there was a lot of stuff, but God bless, I didn't. And now I was able to learn the hard way so that I could hopefully share it with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's so generous for you to give that as a resource to those. So we encourage you all to take advantage of that if that fits for you. And thank you all so much for joining us today. And we, until next time, transform you. We wish God's blessing upon you.
Are you ready to embark on a journey of personal transformation and inner healing? Our intensive online coaching program is designed for individuals and couples seeking to reconnect with their true selves. Dive into our lessons, activations, live coaching calls, and educational readings tailored to uncover limiting beliefs, healing emotional wounds, and to cultivate a life filled with authenticity. Transform yourself, transform your relationships. It's time to transform you. See the description below to see how to join Transform You.